Good morning, everyone. I think my lens is dirty again. Excuse me. Ah, that's better. Say hi, Petey. Say hi, Petey. You've got 4 teeth. 2 on top, 2 on the bottom. Good morning. I'm sorry I'm starting late, starting early, whichever way you want to look at it. Because I was originally going to start at 10 a.m. Things got a little hectic this morning. Was going to have to start at 10:30, but then things calmed down a little, so here I am. I'm going to talk a little bit about what's going on this morning with our family before I go into the topic at hand, which is breastfeeding and modesty. But because I changed the time of when I was going to start, I'm just going to talk a little bit about our personal life in the meantime. Our house situation is still up in the air. In fact, it's kind of going from bad to worse. The general contractor that was going to deal with getting the house fixed, the original damage was estimated by the insurance company at $20,000. Some of that we had to pay ourselves because it wasn't covered, the deductible and the depreciation on the roof. And also they won't pay out the full amount until the work is completed. So they originally estimated at $20,000. Hi everybody. And when they actually got into the work, they, in demoing out the stuff, realized no, there's actually more like $30,000 worth of work there. So basically they got all the stuff taken out and destroyed, and they failed to submit the hire quote to the insurance company. So while they caused $30,000 worth of demo and damage and whatever, they had only gotten the $20,000 approved by the insurance company. So $14,000 of that, well, $11,000 of that went to the roof, and that left about $8,500 for the inside. When they got different subcontractors in there to give them a quote for the work on the inside, the subcontractors all came back giving them estimates for about $15,000, $16,000. Because, like I said, they had found more damage. They had torn out a lot more ceilings and walls than was originally anticipated. So because they could not find a subcontractor to do the work for half price, and because they had not gotten approval from the insurance company, last week the general contractor basically dropped us as clients. The contractor called me. They've been dealing with the case at that company, and he said, well, I'm just going to cash you out, and you can just find your own subcontractor or contractor to do the inside work. Good luck. Which is just horrendous, because we are on Monday again moving to a new rental, and that one is only good through the 24th. It's really hard to find a rental that has enough beds for how many people we have that's just available for an extended period of time. So typically I can only find something anywhere between 2 to 8 weeks. So the current one I found is for 3 weeks. That's the longest I could find. So basically we have to move on Monday, but that rental is only good through the 24th of January. The general contractor dropped me and said, well, you're going to have to try to find somebody to do the work for you, $8,500. And when he said he was going to cash me out, I actually thought I was going to get money back, because the insurance company had paid us $11,000, and I had already cut the general contractor checks for $12,500 for the roof and for starting the inside work, which we had to upfront pay 50% of that. So when he said he was going to cash me out, I assumed he was going to give back some of that $12,500. Yes, Chloe. So coming to find out, no, when he said cash out, he actually wanted $2,000 more from me, because now they're saying that the roof they put on, which in the original bid was $11,000, now they're saying, well, actually that roof, that ended up costing closer to $15,000, $14,000 and change. And the cabinets that they rebuilt, 2 tiny cabinets that had some minor water damage, so minor that it did not need to be replaced, they just had to be rebuilt. They want an extra $1,000 for that. So not only have these people dropped me as a customer, have messed it up with the insurance company to where I have interior work in the amount of $16,000 to get down on $8,000, but now they also want $2,000 more from me. So of course I need to talk to the insurance company about this and, number one, get the higher amount approved. number two, tell them that this contractor that they have worked with in the past is just scum. And hopefully they will approve the higher amount. In the meantime, I will say there is a contractor in our church who has stepped forward and is willing to do the work for $8,500. We will still pay him the difference out of our own money, but he was of his own accord, just came forward and he said, hey, just whatever it covers, I will do the work, no matter if it's a loss to me or loss to my guys. So they're taking care of that. We will pay them out of our own money if the insurance does not cover. Pardon me. Chloe, I can't hear you loud. You're loud. So anyway, that's what's going on with our family. I'm just praying that the contractor from our church that's in there now, that it can get done by the 24th, because I just don't want to move a fifth time. So that's just a really minor thing. And then of course I'm sure you are all aware of the situation with Steadfast Baptist Church that was kind of thrown into our lap on Monday, and everything that's come of that. So that's been a challenge this week. Okay, Chloe, you gotta go to the back row. Be very quiet. Yeah, right? We are in a parking lot right now, just running errands and appointments. My normal life, of course, does not go on hold when these kinds of things happen. So if you could please pray for Leslie Romero and the kids. And if you could please pray for Steadfast Baptist Church and for the Shelley family that stepped up to take over and deal with the situation. So I'm very thankful to Pastor Shelley for doing that, and if you could please pray for wisdom on the part of everyone involved in that. So I wanted to talk today on the topic of breastfeeding and modesty. And this is a topic that I've touched on in my blog before, and my husband has covered it in sermons. And I think that there's a lot of bad, false, even harmful information and attitudes out there. And the thing that triggered me about this is the fact that Donnie Romero, as he's sleeping with hookers all over the country, not willing to own up to it unless he was confronted with evidence, not taking responsibility, and more that I'm not at liberty to say as far as his attitude is concerned. While he's doing all that, he got up repeatedly, again and again, and preached against breastfeeding without a cover, women in cleavage, modesty, and things like that, of that nature. In fact, if you go to his videos and you search the word whore, you're going to find more videos than if you search the word marriage. And I wonder why whores are front and center of his mind, of course. So that came through in his language. I think if I had listened to his sermons, which I never did, I might have caught on to him sooner. But, you know, it reminds me of the Pharisees, that they have omitted the weightier matters of the law. You know, they want to talk about tithing on mint and cumin, and as he's out there sleeping with prostitutes, he actually has the gall to act like a woman breastfeeding is putting on some public striptease to try to lead men into adultery in church. So that's why I want to talk about this topic, just to put some sense out there. And just in general terms, anytime you see somebody add commandments to the Word of God that are not there, just be very careful. God has enough commandments in the Bible for us to say grace over. In fact, in Ecclesiastes says, fear God and keep His commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. You know, if all we keep is just the commandments that God put in the Bible, that's plenty, and we have enough to say grace over right there. So anytime somebody preaches for commandments, the doctrines of men, or his opinion, or what he thinks is right, just be very, very careful that you are dealing with an insincere person. Insincere because basically they have such a need to persuade you of how godly and clean and righteous they are. Because it's not sincere, because it's not actually coming from a heart that loves God, they don't know what sincere looks like. They don't know what legit looks like. They are just kind of thinking, well, this is what it would look like. They're faking it. And you know, the one thing that human beings are really good at, just excellent at, more than any computer could ever be, is human beings are very good at spotting when something is fake. In fact, when companies try to make products that are fake or seek to imitate something that's legitimate, for example, fake fruit in a bowl or things like that, one of the biggest challenges to overcome is that human beings detect when something is fake. And there's a lot of science behind that, but one of the main reasons why human beings can detect when something is fake is because the fake is too perfect. So just from the psychology behind that, when something is too perfect, it's because somebody is trying too hard to make something legitimate, and in trying so hard, they forget to leave out the flaws that come with genuine things. And when you make something too perfect, it's because it's insincere and it's just phony. So anytime you see somebody with just these off-the-charts, crazy, insane views and radical ideas, for example, Michael Pearl and his child training book that I've made a video against, to train up a child, those things that come up, that's always a huge red flag. So beware anytime you see that. So how does this tie in with breastfeeding? What did you do? What did you do? Well, Donnie Romero had put out a clip from a sermon some years ago, and he believed this all throughout about breastfeeding and how it has to be done with a cover, and he could not specifically find a Bible verse to support him. So he instead turned to the passage about men and long hair and saying, well, doesn't even nature itself teach you that a man having long hair dishonors his head and how it's a shame unto him, and that even nature itself teaches us that men should have short hair. So yes, nature itself does teach us that. However, he then went on to basically use that verse to say, well, nature itself teaches us certain things. For example, nature itself teaches us, and then he said this perverted thing that I'm not even going to repeat, but I'll link the clip below. And the fact that he's connecting this very perverse sin with men having long hair and women breastfeeding out of cover, it really says a lot about him. So anyway, he basically says, well, there is no specific commandment in the Bible against breastfeeding without a cover, but even nature itself teaches you that a woman being topless is nakedness, and therefore a woman breastfeeding without a cover is nakedness. Now, there are several things on there. Number one, it is entirely possible to breastfeed without a cover without showing any skin. So that's number one. Number two, yes, if you don't use a cover, it is almost certain and it is almost inevitable that you probably will show some skin. And he seems to think that that is exposing your nakedness. Now, according to the Bible, the only nakedness is from the loins to the thighs. So I always teach my kids waist to knee. And he basically wants to say that, no, the upper body is nakedness. And in another sermon of his, to make that point, because then people are like, well, if it's nakedness on a woman, it would have to be nakedness on a man. So he then went to this logical leap of, in a sermon, proving that the upper body is nakedness and that men being shirtless is nakedness. And he turned to some obscure passage. I didn't want to listen to his sermon, so I didn't find out. But he went to some obscure passage in one of the major prophets, I think, where he tried to prove that all upper body is nakedness, and that a man being shirtless is nakedness. It's a man being shirtless is like a man without pants on in his mind, as he's banging hookers, mind you, and then going home to his wife and kids. So I want to back up to the fact that the Bible only defines loins, basically waist to knee as nakedness. And then his use of the scripture, well, let all things be done decently and in order, or does not even nature itself teach you? Now, what's interesting about the passage of does not even nature itself teach you is that Paul doesn't just say, and the Bible doesn't just say, well, nature itself teaches you, so I don't have to explain to you about hair length. He says, nature itself teaches you, and then he goes on to greatly explain hair length. So hair length even though nature itself teaches us, the Bible also teaches us. It's not just like he just says, well, nature itself teaches us, so I don't have to talk about it. He says, nature itself teaches us, and here is what it says. So it is a commandment of God that is in the Bible, and he cannot just take that principle, well, nature itself teaches us, and then run with that and make of it whatever he wants, and basically just substitute whatever his pet doctrine is for, oh, well, whatever nature teaches us. And I mean, if his argument is, so, I think a lot of people that are pro-breastfeeding and breastfeeding without a cover, they would say, oh, that's just so ridiculous that breasts have been sexualized in the United States, in men's minds in the 21st century, and they're not sex objects, they are for feeding babies. Of course I would disagree with that statement. Of course there is a sexual aspect to breasts. You would have to be a fool to deny that. The Bible itself makes it clear that men find breasts sexually attractive. Wow, rocket science. Nobody denies that. However, there's a lot of things that guys find attractive that we don't cover up. I mean, if you were to cover up every part of a woman's body that is attractive to a man, you would have to go in a burqa. And there are people and there are religions that teach that. And again, you will notice the religion that teaches that is a religion of pedophilia and perversion, where they have to basically cover up the wickedness in their heart by going over the top on their standards. That's not a coincidence. They try to have this fake form of godliness and make themselves out to be more righteous than they are. So if you wanted to cover up every part of a woman's body, I mean, men find hair attractive, eyes, lips, everything. In fact, in the Song of Solomon, as you go through the chapters, you will find that every part of a woman's body is mentioned in an attractive manner. The hair, the teeth, the eyes, the mouth, the breasts. But then conspicuously, the scripture does not make reference to any part of the anatomy on either male or female, anywhere from the navel, that's the lowest it goes, and then it picks up again at the knee, which incidentally is the exact area that the Bible calls nakedness. So when it actually comes down to the nitty-gritty of what truly is nakedness and what truly should stay only between a husband and a wife, the Bible is very careful to not even make mention of those parts. It only talks about parts that are not nakedness. They are attractive, but they're not nakedness. So if you read through the Song of Solomon with that in mind, you will find that it's almost strange the way he goes through the whole thing. He talks about the navel like a goblet, and then he picks up again with the knees, and that's it. There is no mention made of the areas that truly should be between a husband and a wife that the Bible specifically calls nakedness. I have breastfed for the last 17 years, a total of 10 children. I do not use a cover, by and large. I mean, sometimes I will if I'm in church, just so to not offend people that would be offended by it. But other times, I don't use a cover even in church because I don't want to send the message to other moms that they must use a cover if they don't want to use one. Now, the Bible says nothing of having to cover. However, the Bible does say even the sea monsters draw out the breast, they give suck to their young. A sea monster referring to like a whale, you know, a swimming mammal, which is a whale. And the Bible says that even the sea monsters draw out the breast and give suck to their young. Now, the whole phrase, they draw out the breast, he's saying that not for the benefit of the whale, because a whale isn't wearing clothes. A whale has nothing to pull the breast out of, as it were. A whale, you know, it's right there. The child latches on and nurses. But because it's comparing it, it's saying even the sea monsters draw out the breast, and then juxtaposing it with, but the daughter of my people has become cruel as the ostriches in the wilderness, which the ostriches in the wilderness in the Bible are known for abandoning. The Bible makes it clear that they abandon the young and don't care for the young. So it's juxtaposing the whale that cares for its young with the ostrich that abandons her young. And it says, so it's using it as a metaphor for humans, and it says that the sea monsters draw out the breast. What is it drawing it out of? Like, it draws it out of it clearly is drawing it out like it's not covered. That's the whole point. And there are many reasons why a woman should not have to cover up while breastfeeding. Number one, the child resents it. And it is very inconvenient for a child to eat under a blanket. And you could be like, well, you know, what does that matter what the child wants? I would like to see people with that attitude eat all their meals with a tablecloth over their head. Why don't you sit down at a nice dinner table and then pull a big bed sheet over you? And see how much you enjoy your meal and how much that does for you. Number two, it is simply not safe. Our climate, it is not safe to be breastfeeding a baby with a blanket over it. Number three, it can be less modest because you're walking around in this tent. I have many times been breastfeeding and nobody knew, whereas if I wrapped up in a big tent or a shawl or a sling, I think that draws more attention. But I think most importantly, one of the biggest reasons why women should not cover up when they're breastfeeding is the fact that babies hate it, so babies just get the meal over with as quickly as they can. If I do use a sling to nurse the baby and I cover the baby typically nurses for 5 minutes or less and then is done. They just want to eat, get the food, and get out of there because it's hot, it's stuffy, they can't see mom, they can't see anybody. And that's enough to feed them as far as nutritionally. But a child does not just nurse for nutrition. A child nurses for comfort. What's your matter back there, Papa? Okay, here, you give him the applesauce. Where's the applesauce? Here, and here's a bib for him. Anna's back there helping with my little critter. A child does not just nurse for food. A child nurses for comfort. It's like a pacifier. They nurse if they have teething pain. Let me see, I might have to take him.
You won't, I just have to take him.
Can you go to the back row with him then? Okay, alright. So, 1 second, I need to take him. Give me the baby. I'll take him. Yeah, I'll take him. Give him up here. Come here, Popsy. Hand him to me. Can you hand him to me? Yeah. Here he is. Here he is. Here he is. Alright. So when a child does not nurse for more than what he needs to in order to just get the food, the lactational amenorrhea will not work. The child has to be at the breast suckling for a certain amount of time. It has nothing to do with how much milk is being exchanged. It has all to do with how many minutes the child is spending suckling at the breast. That controls the hormones that hold off ovulation until such a time as is safe for the mother to become pregnant again. That's why you will find that by and large, people who have these rabid ideas about being covered completely every time they're breastfeeding, even in the privacy of their own home, even around their own kids, they will have a baby every 9 to 12 months, more often than not. And I don't think that's safe. I don't think that's how God intended it. And that's, you know, the lactational amenorrhea is the way that God provided to space pregnancy safely without having to resort to hormonal birth control or whatever other methods people use. So that is the biggest issue with that. Now, as far as modesty, because of course as Christians there's nakedness and then there's modesty, and the two are very different issues. So while I don't think that the upper body is nakedness, yes, of course I do think that there's great occasion for being immodest for a woman. For example, I don't think it's all right. I don't think it's right to wear a bikini top. Not because it's nakedness, but because it is immodest. Now, what makes the difference for it being immodest versus appropriate? Well, you know, I'm not against makeup. I personally don't use any makeup. I don't think it's a sin. The sin would be if the Bible said that it's a sin. It's not. I just find that a lot of makeup that ladies wear is a sin because it's immodest, you know, if they go way overboard. Another example would be shoes, you know. I never wear these crazy high heel weird stilettos, not only because I would fall over in them, but because I call them to my girls. I'm like, well, those are hooker shoes, and I guess Romero should know all about that, but they're simply immodest. So there's a difference between nakedness and modesty. So while I don't think that the upper body is nakedness, yes, there's great opportunity to be immodest. So a low cut cleavage, a bikini top, woman going topless, those are a sin because they are immodest. Because the only reason why a woman is exposing those areas is to draw attention to herself and to be flashy and to get men interested in her carnally. But the same could be said about, you know, hooker shoes and gaudy makeup. That a woman, it's a sin because a woman is doing it to draw the wrong kind of attention to herself on a carnal level, to get attention from a man for all the wrong reasons. So no, saying that breastfeeding without a cover is okay does not then say, like Romero was trying to say, well then you must be in support of hula girls then, you know, because you must think that being topless is totally fine. No, I don't think being topless is fine. I think breastfeeding without a cover is fine. Because I have news for you, no mother breastfeeds in order to gain attention from anybody, including men. And if God had wanted women, I mean, God could have made it any which way he wanted. He could have made it to where milk is coming out our pinkies. I mean, think how convenient that would be. And I think most women would say, man, if I could have milk coming out my pinky, that'd be so convenient. I mean, it would just be so easy, so convenient. You can feed them while you're driving. You could feed them while cooking. God intentionally, in his wisdom, designed it to where a mother has to hold her child in her bosom to feed it, because there's far more than the nutrition. There is the close bond, there's the chest to chest, the love, the affection, the physical touch. If we could just have it come out of just our pinky, you know, that would all not be happening. It would be all about the nutrition and not about all those other aspects that go into breastfeeding. So a mother breastfeeding nowhere ever 100% of the time is doing that to gain the attention of men, because you're not going to believe this, that's not exactly a man magnet, not like a woman is looking for that, but it's just a necessary thing that moms have to do. And it's not easy, it's very difficult, and breastfeeding rates will tell you that it is very difficult, especially for first-time moms. So the last thing that I would ever want to do is make a mother's life harder by harassing her and acting like she's putting on a hula show or a striptease for men by breastfeeding her precious child. You know, only a pervert would even think that. So to even make that out is just ridiculous. So we at our church have always had a policy of, you do not have to wear a cover to breastfeed. You do not have to harass, you're not allowed to harass mothers who do not use a cover. Now, if somebody says, I want to use a cover every time, I want to put up a pop-up tent whenever I breastfeed, hey, more power to you, go right ahead. If you want to cover head to toe, you do that in your life, but you cannot impose those rules on other people, and you're going to have to live with the consequences of those choices when you have a baby every 12 months, and if that's what you want to do, more power to you. But that can simply not be taught. So yes, it is possible to breastfeed modestly without just being covered from head to toe in a blanket for the harm of the child and the harm of the mother. And I think I covered all the points. You know, it's not like, you know, I think the reason why people are worried about it, because like I said, it is not possible to breastfeed without a cover without ever showing skin. In fact, in one of my live feeds a couple of weeks ago, I don't know if anybody caught this, I was nursing the baby, and in reviewing it, I noticed that for like a split second, you could see a sliver of my skin as I was latching him on or latching him off. And really, based on that sliver of skin, it looks no different, like, say, than a sliver of skin on my upper arm or my neck. And it's not like a man who is a righteous Christian and happily going through life in his walk with God sees a sliver of skin on a breastfeeding mother and he just immediately goes out and commits adultery and is tempted by that. You know, the reason why people have that attitude is because that's in their heart. A normal man doesn't just look at a breastfeeding woman and is just like, whoa, how can I get in on this action? You know, they realize, well, she's caring for a child. It's a very maternal thing to do, and, you know, just leave her alone. If I see a nursing mom, I'm not just like, whoa, let me hone in and like, what are you doing there? You know, the natural thing is to, you know, give the mom privacy because she's having a moment with her child, and you just let them feed the baby and not just impose on them and harass them. So it is not possible to have a good breastfeeding relationship if you're always covering up. And It is not possible to feed without a cover, without sometimes showing skin. But guess what? Just get over yourself. No normal man is just gonna fall into adultery because he saw a nondescript sliver of skin on a woman somewhere. And if you have to worry about that, then probably because you have bigger issues going on in your marriage, as we now have seen in this example of this Pharisee hypocrite who was teaching for commandments his ideas and doing much worse. Hi, honey. Okay, I have not had a chance to watch the comments. I just wanted to encourage you nursing moms that it is entirely possible to breastfeed discreetly and modestly, even if that means not having a cover and not showing skin, and once in a while some skin will be shown. Oh, the horror. And that no, men are not just in droves falling all over themselves to commit adultery because they saw a breastfeeding woman. I have been breastfeeding for 17 years. My teenage sons, I have a 17-year-old, a almost 16-year-old, and a 14-year-old, and they have seen me breastfeed as long as they can think back. And yes, while breasts definitely are sexual objects, I think that in our society, yes, there is a severe imbalance of breasts being viewed as sex objects versus breasts being viewed as a way to feed a baby. For example, in my life, if you think about how many hours a day I spend breastfeeding, I have for the last 17 years spent at least 1 hour every day for the last 17 years. Figure out how many hours it is. Jeez. 1 second. They're in there waiting for you.
I said Rebecca, but she didn't look at me, and so I thought
no,
it was another girl.
No, they're in there.
Okay.
Sorry, just John is in with Rebecca getting something. So they have seen me breastfeed my kids for an hour a day. So my breasts are being used to feed a baby for an hour or more per day. And then you can do the math for yourself. How many hours or minutes per day your breasts are spent for other uses, such as, the Bible speaks of, to let the husband be satisfied with his wife's breasts. So the discord there in a normal marriage with kids and breastfeeding versus what society puts out. Yeah, and in United States America, 99% of the times when we see breasts, they're used as a sex object. Whereas in a normal marriage and normal family life, the way God ordained, 99% of the time they're used to feed a baby. So while it's both out there, the percentage of how it's viewed has been skewed greatly in favor of them being sex objects, when the way God designed them is actually that they're greatly, far more greatly used as a way to feed a baby and be healthy. So my sons, who are 17, 16, and 14, have seen me breastfeed for at least an hour every day of their lives, as far back as they can remember. And guess what they do when they see us as the rain? Not because they're not attracted to breasts, but they're definitely not attracted to a woman breastfeeding because they've seen their mother do that their whole life, and to them that's not something where they just think about being carnal when they see a mother breastfeeding. So I think that the reason why people's perceptions are so skewed and off is, number one, because they have wickedness in their own heart and they're trying to cover that, or because in our modern perverse society, the emphasis of what breasts are for has been skewed so far on the side of sex objects that they cannot even figure that they actually predominantly to feed a baby. So when they see a breastfeeding mom, they're thinking sex. So anyway, if you have any questions, this is a good time to start shooting them at me. I'm going to start looking at the comments. I don't want to refer to the Romero situation anymore, so if you have a question about that, please don't ask it, because I can't speak anymore about that. But if you have a question specifically relating to breastfeeding and modesty, you can shoot that my way. Otherwise, I'm going to shut this thread down. And like I said, please continue to pray for the Shelley family and Leslie Romero and her kids, the Steadfast Baptist Church, Pure Words Baptist Church, and the people that go there, and that whole situation. Oh, you sweetheart. All right, so I'm not seeing anything else here. How long do you recommend breastfeeding? I think that's a very individual question. It will be up to each mother. I try to breastfeed for at least the first 12 months, and I have breastfeed all my kids for the first 12 months. Once they start solids, they usually wean pretty fast. The longest I've breastfed is 20 months. I think the shortest is 14 months. Oh, you kissing your mommy. You are. Peter makes kissy sounds now, so he latches onto my face and then he makes kissy sounds. Kissy sounds? Ba, ba, ba. But again, that's an individual decision. I personally do not feel comfortable breastfeeding beyond 24 months. Just because I think the child is too old at that point. And also, once I get pregnant, I like to wean the child, just because it gives me cramping. What would be my opinions about people who say rude things to me in public while breastfeeding? All these years later, and I have never, nada, zilch, not one time had anybody comment rudely. I have many times had people come up to me, even old ladies, like old ladies, saying, I commend you for what you do. I used to feed my babies, and I used to breastfeed them. That was so wonderful. And back then, you know, we weren't able to breastfeed them in public, and they would commend me for doing it in public. I've never one time been confronted, but I do know what I would say if I were ever confronted. If somebody ever came to me and said, hey, give me that from down there. If somebody ever came to me and said, whoa, don't you have a cover or something like that, I would say, sure I do, here it is, and go ahead and put it over your head. So I would just turn it around on them. I'm not one to be afraid of confrontation. So if somebody ever said that to me, I would turn it right around on them. I know that other people are not comfortable with that, so I don't know what advice I would have for them. But fenugreek from milk supply, yes, it can work really, really well, except for people where it doesn't, and then it has like pretty much the opposite effect. So with me, I found that fenugreek works well for me for a little bit, and then I have to lay off it for a couple of weeks, or else it actually has a negative impact, and then when I take it again, it has a positive impact. So I kind of have to cycle it back and forth on the fenugreek. As far as vitamins and the breast milk, by the time the vitamin content in the breast milk goes down, the kids are usually eating solids and getting a lot of good produce up there through that. So I'm not one to supplement with vitamins for the babies. Any other questions specifically? Hi, Chloe. You're munching. You're munching. So, anyway, thank you if you tuned in. And please just continue in prayer for the situations mentioned. And if you have any more questions that you think of later, you can also leave them in the comments, and I'll try to respond down there. Thank you for tuning in, and you have a wonderful, blessed weekend.